There we go. Thank you so much. So grateful to be here today. And I want to start off by thanking NCIDEA for making space and time for this conversation about Black entrepreneurship in this event, and also for the commitment they've made to the Black Entrepreneurship Initiative as a part of their core work. That is huge. So thank you. And I'd like to welcome our panel. Would love to kind of give a context for our conversation today. We have labeled, or this panel has been labeled Black Wall Street. And I want to make sure we're very clear about what we talk about when we use that phrase. Black Wall Street has had a phenomenal history in our nation around what it looks like and what it was to center Black business in our economy and our nation over history. And we are going to honor and speak to that today, but we're also going to go further, and we're going to talk about what that means for our current context and for what it looks like in the future. So we're going to have a conversation collectively today with the goals of looking back towards Black Wall Street and what that has meant and why it was necessary to our history as a nation, and what it has meant for our current context, what that means and where we are for Black entrepreneurship today, and what it looks like to reimagine the future of what we can do and be together for Black entrepreneurs in our society. So I'm going to start by welcoming all of our panelists and asking them to introduce themselves, their organizations that they represent, as well as their why. Why do they do this work supporting Black entrepreneurship in our communities? I'll hand it over to Carl.
Good afternoon. My name's Carl Webb, and I am a serial entrepreneur. I've been fortunate to spend over 4 decades signing my name on the front side of the check. And I've done that through working in marketing, public relations, real estate development, and now I own a I am the co-founder of a co-working community called Provident 1898, which is located in the historic North Carolina Mutual Life Insurance Building, downtown Durham, which has great significance because so many of the businesses that we have in the southeast region of the country and even nationally have some connection to the founders of NC Mutual, John Merrick, Dr. Aaron McDuffie Moore, and Charles Clinton Spalding. And part of my why, after a career in development and marketing PR, especially around issues of diversity and inclusion, I've had the pleasure of sitting in rooms devising strategies for looking like we were doing a lot of great things versus strategies where in fact we were doing things. And it's surprising to me to understand the point at which people engage with their understanding of the history and the legacy of Black business. And so part of Provident 1898's goal is to amplify the contribution that in 1898, 7 men got together to create North Carolina Mutual at a time that in Wilmington, North Carolina in 1898, the Black power structure, Black business community was actually being burnt down, our first coup d'etat in this country. So, you know, North Carolina has a rich history in that a lot of ugly things happen, but a lot of great things from an innovative standpoint happen, and a lot of it happened in Durham, North Carolina, and part of our legacy is to tell that story. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Henry.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Henry Rock. I'm the founder and executive director of City Startup Labs, and I want to give a shout out to Tom Rue, who I've known for a number of years. He saw me start this idea some years ago. And then also, I need to acknowledge Wells Fargo, because if it were not for Wells Fargo, City Startup Labs would not be doing this work today. Anyway, we are in the business of developing entrepreneurial talent and capacity. We have essentially two tracks that we focus on. One is working with formerly incarcerated persons, right? And when we first started, our emphasis was on young black men, those millennials that folks were talking about earlier, who had an interest in wanting to become entrepreneurs and an excitement about that. But we found that as we progressed as an organization, there was an untapped element or population that we really felt was overlooked and really was deserving of particular attention around this entrepreneurial journey, and that is formerly incarcerated folks. They experience all kinds of barriers to employment, and self-employment can be an option for them. So we want to make sure that we lean in on that area. The other track that we focus on, and this in part was prompted by one of the board members of the BEC, and that's Spencer Disher, who in a meeting that we had said, you know, we're not seeing enough black companies that are on the Inc. 500 or the Inc. 5000. And we had an opportunity actually to acquire a company called Black Tech Interactive and the Black Tech Charlotte brand. We did that early last year, and in part it was because those entrepreneurs that we had been working with, we had taken an agnostic approach to. And we decided to, let's shift gears and work with technology companies in particular. So we're focused on building a startup studio, as well as convenings of black tech talent. And the reason that I got into this actually is because I spent most of my professional career working with black entrepreneurs in the media business. This was during sort of the heyday of the media game. And I had an opportunity actually to work personally with John Johnson and many, many others who were in the business of hiring black folk who otherwise would not have an opportunity to work in the media industry or with advertising agencies. And so I kind of cut my teeth with that. So anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you, Henry. Glad to have you with us. All right, Toni.
Hi, my name is Toni Barnes. I am the Associate Director of Hustle Winston-Salem, which was founded by the wonderful Faye Horwitt, Alan Younger, which you saw earlier, and if y'all don't know her, the magnificent Maglia Synth, as well as a few others. And Hustle is just all about advocating for the entrepreneurs and being sure that they're being represented at the table. We were founded out of necessity. The founders realized that there wasn't a connection between the resources here in Winston-Salem and the entrepreneurs who really needed them. And so just like a lot of black businesses, necessity was the driver, and Winston-Salem was born. Hustle Winston-Salem was born. I also wear the hat of ecosystem builder in residence with the wonderful statewide initiative by Forward Cities called Black Wall Street Forward. I see a fellow EBIR here, as well as some of my council members. I want to shout you guys out. Thank you so much for your support, as well as my own business, Building the Boss, where I help solopreneurs out. And why do I do the work that I do? My family always ingrained black history, black culture, black community throughout my entire life. They were very excited to hear that I was on this panel. And pretty much I do what I do because I am a black business. I am black history. So it seemed right. Hustle drew me in, and they can't get rid of me.
Thank you, Toni. And I will tell you, it warms my heart just individually that you are here and on this stage. Thank you.
I'm Jay. It's just the letter J. I'm the founder of Black Wall Street AVL in Asheville, and the owner of Grind, the coffee shop. I'm really glad to see some of our family from Asheville here, Nicole Lee and Solomon Imer, and the professor himself, Dwayne Barton, I heard is here. But The reason I do this work, I was incarcerated, and I was incarcerated as a result of a business crime. I had started my first company when I was 26 years old, and I had 150 employees. One of those employees filed fraudulent paperwork, and because Medicaid was one of my funding sources, I am responsible as the CEO. And so I wondered, actually, I said to the investigator, I said, y'all know who did this. Y'all know him. Y'all have watched him. Why not go after him? They said, well, Mr. Hackett, we pay you, and you're supposed to know. I was like, wow. So at 29 years old, facing this investigation after paying a few fines of a few $100,000, then I was incarcerated for 4 years with a $1.5 million restitution and 3 years probation. And when I got out, I was hired by a workforce development program. That program, Green Opportunities in Asheville, was actually founded by Dwayne and a brother, Dan Leroy. And they hired me while I was on work release, and my work release site was in Gaston County. So I would leave Gaston County Jail and go to Asheville every day after being approved. And this program, a wonderful nonprofit, we were able to work with a law firm actually here in Winston-Salem. I've never seen them in person, but it's Womble Bond Dickerson. And anybody here from there? Or anybody know them? Please tell them.
I know them as Womble Carlisle. I don't know. I left a long time ago.
We've said
so
wonderful things to them by email, but they helped design a strategy where the nonprofit would own for-profit subsidiaries, and it was featured in the 2018 North Carolina Bar Journal. After I left Green Opportunities, I opened what was Asheville's first black-owned coffee shop, according to the document. We know that there were more; they just didn't get to be documented. And inside the coffee shop, named Grind, we started to just to set up tables for people to sell their stuff, and it developed into what we know of today as Black Wall Street ABL. Initially with a grant from NC Idea Foundation. In 2020, we applied and we said, what if you all would give us the money to help support 20 black businesses and help them grow from idea phase? And in that year, we grew from 20 to actually 74 black businesses and generated over $1 million in revenue. And it was on a tour, actually on Dwayne's tour. If y'all haven't met him, you need to meet him. He gave us this quote, and I've kept it since then, and this is why I do what we do. In our neighborhood, East Riverside area, it was the largest residential area, large residential area at over 400 acres. The urban renewal project there was unmatched. It was one of the largest in Southeast United States. And we have lost in that neighborhood more than 1,000 homes, 6 beauty parlors, 5 barbershops, 5 filling stations, 14 grocery stores, 3 laundromats, 8 apartment houses, 7 churches, 3 shoe shops, 2 cabinet shops, 2 auto body shops, 1 hotel, 5 funeral homes, 1 hospital, and 3 doctor's offices in that neighborhood. And we intend to reverse urban renewal in Asheville.
Okay, Jay, we can mic drop right here. I'm just saying, but that's real. And what I want to encourage us to think about today is what you just said, what you just shared, and this conversation. This is not an hour-long conversation. This is a conversation that we could have today. We could keep talking for like the rest of the night, and we could keep talking for days on this topic. Because it is so important. That said, we're going to squeeze it in to the amount of time we have. But thank you. I'm going to kick us off by asking each of you a question. And I'll start off actually by share a little bit about myself. That is, I am the CEO and president of a national organization that is focused on equitable entrepreneurship ecosystem building around the country. We are very grateful to be located and headquartered in Durham, North Carolina. Forward Cities has worked with over 50 communities around the country to help them tackle this issue around equitable entrepreneurship. And I'll share a little bit more about the work that we do along the conversation, but I want to make sure we have time for all of our guests to dig in. We're going to take a deep dive into this work. We're going to explore the past, present, and future of Black entrepreneurship in our communities. And I'm going to start by asking everyone, what do you think is one thing that you would like this audience today to know about the history of Black entrepreneurship in our country and our state and its impact on Black entrepreneurs and the broader economy? I know it's hard. One thing is hard, but one thing.
I guess as the elder statesman, I'll take that question. I think first and foremost, and I like to, I have an address that I've done where I talk about context and continuity, right? So the context piece is, why we are where we are, right? What are the economic circumstances that have us placed as not just Black businesses, but Black folk. And I like to say that we came here with a tailwind and have been facing a headwind ever since, right? And so I would say that when we think in terms of context, there's that piece. But continuity is the thing that I want to lean in on, and that is that I spoke about my own personal experience working with Black entrepreneurs, right? So we have had Black entrepreneurs since before the beginning of this country, right? And we need to recognize that there is this linkage, these chains chains in a good sense, right? Chains of entrepreneurial activity, business building, innovation, invention, all of that's been going on since before the founders, right? And so if we have that kind of, sensibility, I think we can, use that, and hopefully this is what we try to do at City Startup Labs, use that as a grounding for the work that we're currently doing, as well as, looking out on the horizon and seeing what the future looks like.
Thank you. Henry. Toni?
I would think, I know, I want everybody in this room to take home that there was a lot of successful Black businesses and Black business districts. It wasn't just Tulsa's Black Wall Street or even Durham's Black Wall Street. It was historical districts here in Winston-Salem, like Depot Street, that is now called Patterson Avenue, and Church Street. In Greensboro, it was East Market. And all of them were intentionally destroyed with malice, and it had government backing to do so. Specifically, the East Market businesses, Black businesses in Greensboro, they were given a check for their business to move, but it was pennies. It wasn't even enough to pick up their stuff and go somewhere else. Here in Winston, you erected US 52, and it literally destroyed the homes of the patrons that supported the Black businesses here, thus ending the community support that these Black businesses had. So I just really want us to understand Black business history.
Thank you, Jay.
I think in the movie Color Purple, towards the end of it, we see Celie, and y'all that haven't seen it, make sure you watch it. But she says, go put on these breeches, one size fits all. And she's in her shop making clothes, and she said, I said one size fit all. And she puts on the pants and realizes that that Celie has done something innovative. These are things that Celie had always been doing throughout all of the abuse, all of the battery, all of the subjugation. Celie had always had this ability, and it had not been fully realized until later in the movie. And what I think people need to realize is that entrepreneurship is everywhere. It is part of our life's blood as Black people in this America. It is in this country. It is how we have done what we've done. And even as our elder statesman said before we got here, it was here. So when we look at the need that exists in our community, maybe we're looking for solutions in the wrong places. And maybe we have locked up our solutions in the prison industrial complex, because when we look at folks that may have participated in what was the illegal drug economy, we see folks that are experts at human resources, at money management, at risk management, at evaluation. They're wonderful at motivation and figuring out what people want and what people need, and how to convince somebody to stand out somewhere in the way that they used to do what they do. Convince somebody to stand out somewhere and be committed to a cause, even at risk of jail. These individuals are great businessmen, and maybe we haven't tapped into that. During my 4 years in prison, I met people that were very brilliant, that were very honest and very direct, people that today are wonderful businessmen in very legal senses. And I think that in our community, we're missing the mark by overlooking reentry populations, and even some that may live in public housing that might not make it into our board meetings, our committee meetings, but they're available and they have the solutions.
Thank you, Jay. Carl.
So, yeah, for me, it's also the historic appreciation for all of the things that we've done. Henry mentioned John Johnson, and, you know, unfortunately, we're of the age that we throw names out, assuming people know that John Johnson was the publisher of Ebony Magazine and Jet Magazine, and did that on a shoestring budget at a time that it took a whole lot of confidence and faith to step out and do that kind of thing. But that's also part of the challenge that we have, is that so many of the contributions that businessmen and business people like John Johnson has made, history has sort of forgotten. So one of the things that we want you to do is to understand where we've been, what our contributions are, but also we want you to understand that we're going to be fine, and we're going to make our way, as we have done for, 400 years, either in an oppressed people or a semi-free people. So we're going to create and innovate, and then we're going to take those ideas and we're going to pump those to the broader community. But what we're trying to do is to put ourselves in a position to realize more of the profits and the proceeds from the innovation and the creativity that we bring to the market. That has not been the case. So hopefully when you leave, we know if you look at any statistic in America, you're going to find a group that's at the top and a group that's at the bottom. That's just how it is. We're going to tell you about HBCUs. We're going to tell you about the lack of access to capital. Many of you know that and know this information. The question is, can we motivate you to go out and do something different? I find myself constantly speaking to the choir. I'm speaking to people who understand what the issues are. Most times they look like me. But my white colleagues and friends, they also coalesce and work with me. But what I don't often see is them taking that information to their network of contacts and sort of sharing it, because there's really a certain amount of ignorance that we have by just not knowing what our contributions have been.
Thank you, Carl. And I will say, Henry and Carl, I grew up in Winston-Salem. Ebony was on our coffee table all the time. Jet was on our bathroom counter. Because
which got read more.
Huh? Yeah.
I said, which got read more.
Yeah, it got read more. I'm saying. You had a little more time in the bathroom. I'm just saying. But this is what my parents wanted to instill in me, is that this is about Black excellence and Black business, and they wanted to instill that in me, and that continues, and that is what we do. To Carl's point, we continue. It doesn't matter who's supporting us or not. We continue this work, and one of the things that I would hope that folks would take away from this conversation is more recent history, and that is that Black leaders, Black organizations like the people represented on this stage have been doing this work to support Black entrepreneurs steadily and without break. Like, we just keep on, right? And in the recent future, in the recent history, you know, we know that George Floyd and what happened, it activated a lot of people to start to talk about and think about and make change in some of these things and want to do differently. But I think it's very important when we think about this recent history for us to think about making sure we're investing in the folks that have been doing this all along. Who are the organizations and the leaders that have been doing this before it was popular, before it was sexy, before it was the thing to do? And so I want to make sure we're not ignoring recent history in all of this. So I'd like to turn the conversation to the present. And if you could all share, what is like something that you see working for the support of Black entrepreneurs in our current economy and our current status, and maybe give some very specific, tangible things that you are either doing from a programmatic perspective that you observe that are working.
There's something that I noticed. I grew up in Philadelphia, and I grew up as a black kid in a Puerto Rican neighborhood, and then I tested out and went to a white school in Center City. So I was a black kid in Puerto Rican neighborhood, then the black kid at the white school, and I had to figure out how to communicate across these barriers. Now at risk, my black friends said I sounded white. My white friends would not say it, but I was too black. So I never really fit in, and then I got comfortable just standing out and just being weird. And it's okay, because I'm in Asheville where weird is cool. And so I figured out how to do this thing that later on I found out was called code switching. And then I began to challenge some of our organizational partners. You say that the resource is available, and you supposedly pseudo open the door, but the application is convoluted, and your conversation is weird, and it's twisted, and it doesn't make sense. And so it's hiding in plain sight, and you're able to check off the box and say, it's available, but it's distracting and detracting, and it's not attractive. And so what we decided to do with any of the partners that partner with Black Wall Street, we actually ask every one of them, what are you going to make available to BIPOC businesses? And then show us your applications and let us give you feedback on how to change it. One of our partners, Mountain BizWorks, who's also a partner and supported by NC Idea Foundation, they agreed, and they actually decoded one of their applications. It was grants available for entrepreneurs and solopreneurs. They allowed us to decode their application, and lots of black businesses were funded. The same thing happened in Henderson County. The same thing happened over and over. Even with First Horizon Bank, one of our partners, they came to us, wanted to partner, and they have their bank regulations, et cetera. And then we said, well, can you just tell us what this means? Like, really, just uncover this and tell us the real deal. And Vice President Stephanie Lee made herself available, shared her information, and decoded it, and then created the pathway for folks. So for any of you that are supporting black businesses, et cetera, nobody needs you to dumb it down. That's not the case. But you know it's confusing, and you know it's stupid. And it doesn't make sense. It's a waste of paper, and it's not necessary. What do you need to know in order to make your decision? And then if you want to help them, let's figure out how to remove the barriers that cause people to not meet those requirements.
I wish I could like snap, but my hands are full. So yes, all the snaps. All right. Toni, you have anything?
Oh, hey. I mean, I don't know how I can follow that up, but thank you. I know hustle. Well, first, I want to answer the original question. I think awareness has come into present day, awareness of black business, awareness of the inequities when it comes to black entrepreneurship. As far as practices that are currently happening, Hustle, I'm very proud to say and be a part of Hustle, as I feel like we are the trusted friend for a lot of black entrepreneurs. We are there to hear their grievances, but then we are also there to do something about it. We are at the tables, we bring it to the table, while still holding on to the trust that our community has with us. So we don't reveal names a lot of times. We just say, hey, y'all know what y'all did. we pretty much we're just there for them. And we hold near and dear what equity and inclusion really is, and we are unapologetically that way at every single table.
Thank you, Toni. Henry?
Yeah, so I think that the work that we're doing as entrepreneurial support organizations is one thing that is absolutely needed, right? So we need to not only do this kind of work, but we need to be in a position where we're vetting, high quality entrepreneurs, right? Best in class that can meet what my man Spencer Disher was talking about. Why can't we get, more black entrepreneurs on the Inc. 500, Inc. 5000 list? But let me also say something else. And I did a little homework because you prompted us to do some homework. So this is a report that McKinsey released last June. And it's the economic state of Black America, what is and what could be. And there are a couple of things I just want to share with you real briefly. One is, in this report, they said, we estimate a $220 billion annual disparity between Black wages today and what they could be in a scenario of full parity, with Black representation matching the Black share of the population across occupations and the elimination of racial pay gaps within occupational categories. This is kind of gets to something that John was speaking of a little earlier about the importance of, building that workforce, right? We're talking about $220 billion annually, right? Okay, another thing. In a parity scenario, Black-owned businesses could generate $1.6 trillion more than they do today. And this has two components. First, if the Black share of business ownership matched the Black share of the population, 615,000 more enterprises would exist, potentially generating $1 trillion in revenue, assuming the current relative levels. And second, if Black-owned firms match the average scale of their industry peers, they would add another $600 billion in revenue. So we're talking about, this is not chump change, folks.
Trillions,
we're talking about some
billions,
serious ducats here, right? So what do we do about that? So that's the current state. And how do we lean into this so that we can address what McKinsey has, in their infinite wisdom, exposed?
Okay. That's a lot of money. I'm just saying that's a lot of money. One of the things I will say to link it back to what Henry shared is we had some stats earlier about Black women entrepreneurs and their rate, right? Is that by accident? Is that that's not by accident. It's because they're not making enough to actually sustain their households because it's inequitable. So they are having to start businesses on the side to actually be able to retain and live the way other Americans are able to live. That's real. That's not like an accident that Black women are at the top. This is because that's what they have to do based on the disparity in workforce and pay.
So for me, I'm fortunate in the NC Mutual building that I mentioned. In 2006, I had an opportunity to become a partner in a real estate group that we acquired the North Carolina Mutual Life Insurance building. This was about a little under $12 million acquisition. And for a little boy growing up in Durham and looking at all of the big fancy people that worked in that building, it was mind-blowing to be in a position to buy that building. But we did, and part of the give back and part of the why and the legacy was creating a space where people could gather and connect, because that building had been that for so many people, because it had an auditorium and a cafeteria that just had all kinds of events. So that was something that was important, but the more important thing for me was to lay down the biases and the prejudices that I had around partnering with white business people. Because in this transaction that we had an opportunity to, I was unable to find black partners that could invest at that level. But I was fortunate to find some other folks that I could work with at that level. And that kind of thing sort of follows you, because when you hear Henry talk a little bit about our past, you got to understand we had separate everything in this country, you know, much like, you know, South Africa and apartheid. I mean, separate everything. So you had great black movie theaters, you name it, we had to, because we had to do that. So now when you start talking about who will partner and align themselves with you, we're fortunate at Provident to have clarity around our vision and our focus, because Forward Cities does ecosystem building work so well that we understood that that was not a business that we needed to be in. But what we needed to do was to collaborate and partner with Forward Cities, and that's exactly what we've done. That's just been tremendously beneficial, because it allows us to do the things that we do best, but it allows us to walk into a new history and legacy of collaborating and working together that wasn't there before. We're also fortunate in that we have NC IDEA. I got a chance to meet Tom Rue a few years back, and I think it could have been around the 2019 conference, and I was really impressed with the work, had heard his name tons of times, and we just chatted a little bit, and I sent him a nice little note, complimentary note, and he responded. Now, that doesn't always happen. He didn't know me, and we talked, and he said, well, let's get together, and we visited. And then he started talking about plans and visions that he had for his organization, groups that were not really being plugged in. He talked about this BEC thing, which I thought was just, you know, another white guy saying some interesting things. But you know, the difference with someone like Tom, and there are a lot of people like this, and I don't want to, you know, make him some saint, but he followed through with me. He gave me an opportunity. He put a BEC in place, and that group clearly is having an impact. They became our anchor tenant at Provident. What he said is, I'm in a lease, give a little bit of time, and we'll talk, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh, here we go. But no, he did exactly what he said. But in the meantime, we talked about the impact of COVID and the loss of black-led businesses. Some 41%, almost 400,000 businesses in this country we lost that were black-owned and black-led. And we talked about ideas about what we could do to solve that problem. He provided a seed grant, and it's not even a seed grant. It was $100,000 to a program that we created that's called Acquire. It's entrepreneurship through acquisition. And LaBone Moses, I don't know if LaBone is here, but she is the architect, the managing director, and our business partner in that. Tom made that happen. But then he came back shortly after that and said, hey, give me some numbers. Let's see how competitive you are. All things being equal, if you have a good situation, we might have something. And in fact, we went back and forth a few times. He's a tough negotiator, didn't give me anything, but his commitment to give me an opportunity. He's there at Provident 1898. He was a man of his word. We have Forward Cities on the other end anchoring things. And I go, why can't we be successful? Well, part of the success lies in the real economy. And if too many of our black-led businesses are considered to be special initiatives, it takes it out of the regular economy. I see Michael Suggs here. He and I have worked many years when he was at R.J. Reynolds, and we know about all kinds of campaigns targeting the African-American consumer and those types of things. But even with that black consumer buying tobacco products, that was the real economy. So many of our black businesses are these little boutique special nice to have. So when times get tough, the money dries up, because it's not the difference between profit and loss for the folks that we're trying to serve. And that's what we also need to shift.
Thank you, Carl. Forward Cities is very grateful to be located and headquartered in Providence 1898 in Durham, and to be alongside NCID in that space, just trying to do things differently. This is what it's going to take. And for standpoint of Forward Cities, the organization that I lead, one of the things that we are doing, we've recognized that it's a long tail work to try and create inclusive economy. This is something that is not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen with just like commitments of statements to equity, but it's going to take real action, and that means a lot of change that's hard for a lot of folks. So what we've realized is that alongside our inclusive entrepreneurship work, we've got to do something a little bit different. We've got to lean into what we can do today to change the narrative for Black entrepreneurs in communities now. And so we've stood up the Black Wall Street Forward initiative across the state, 5 communities across the state to pilot, including Winston-Salem, Durham, Raleigh, Fayetteville, thank you, Charlotte, and Winston-Salem, my hometown, which I'm extremely glad for. And essentially what we're trying to do is say we're not going to wait for the change. We're going to create something now. And that's real. We are creating a narrative change initiative, which is basically saying we're going to shift the economy and the power now by helping communities reimagine what Black Wall Street looks like today. What does it look like to sort of take what worked in Black Wall Street in with bring it forward to think about how that has impacted our current status, and work together collaboratively with Black leaders leading the initiative, not just at the table, but leading the work to think about what we can collectively build for our future for entrepreneurs. And to me, that's part of what this is going to take, is how can each of your communities think about what does Black Wall Street look like now? And that's the work that Forward Cities is doing in real time. I'd like to sort of close out our conversation by thinking about, given what you know and observed, what is it that you think, there's one thing that needs to shift or change for our future to change the narrative for Black entrepreneurs, and what can people here in this room do to make a shift and a change? Oh, that's a big old question. They just went silent on me.
I'll jump in.
Okay.
I think there is, pardon me, some reparative work that needs to be done at a policy level. We didn't get into this situation of our own doing, and we will not be able to get out of it solely of our own doing, right? God bless CDFIs and Black banks. They're doing the best they can with what they have, all right? But until we address the repair that needs to be done, that will deal with the kind of parity issues that I was just speaking to, then we are going to have another conversation 10 years from now talking about the same issues, right? So I think we need to have something along those lines, first and foremost. And lastly, I think that, and Jay kind of spoke to this about how we've been innovators, right? So the term innovation has, in my estimation, has been co-opted by the tech industry, right? So that nobody can do innovation unless you're dealing with tech, right? And yet, as we know, as folks that work with entrepreneurs, innovation is just about problem solving. And so we've been problem solving from the gate, right? And so I think that we need to just think more innovatively in the larger sense about how we take advantage of this talent that exists in our midst. Right? We don't have to look for foreign markets to invest in. We can invest in the foreign markets that are right underneath our noses, right? Because these, by and large, many of the folks that we work with are foreign to folks that otherwise would not know of who we are, right? So, I'll stop right there.
Thank you, Henry. All right, Jay, what you got?
When he said it's about the real economy, that really struck a nerve with me, and I think that we can do a lot more of that. One thing that has happened in Asheville, and we're grateful, Asheville happens to be a tourism-driven economy, and they're projected to do like $3 billion this year, and so we partnered with tourism just to see how can tourism benefit, actually specifically, how can tourism benefit and be supported by BIPOC businesses. And so when we look at the Black contribution, we're looking at tourism in a primary, secondary, tertiary way, just all of the ripple effect of how it can benefit and partner with it, and just real business, period, not Black business, not special business, just business, period. And I think it's important, especially in groups like this, you all that have teams and lead organizations, et cetera, create real partnerships, not the partnership where you just do the MOU and don't show up, or you just contribute whatever your financial product is, but actually push and show up in great numbers. We created a festival in Asheville in the middle of the pandemic. It's called Grind Fest, the celebration of Black business and entrepreneurship. Our first year in 2021, we had 4,000 people come from 19 states. Our second year, which was 2020, then last year was this year, 2022, it was about 9,000 people that came, and registrations were from 35 states. But there were lots of folks across North Carolina that are in driving distance that might not have known and might not have been able to make it, or if they had known, would have been able to make it. When Black businesses, Black organization, Black-led projects are happening, make it your business to come and bring busloads of people. Make sure that that impact is happening because you're there. Don't wait on the sideline and think that somebody else is going to do it. They're not. You're going to do it because you want to be part of the solution, and you're tired of being part of the problem.
Thank you, Jay. Henry, final thoughts on this? Tony. You did, Tony.
Okay. So as a fellow entrepreneur, I have big ideas, but I've been learning to bring them more down to realistic action steps. And to piggyback off of Jay, I would say, like, one word: support. Straight up support Black businesses, Black entrepreneurs, in ways that I believe you should do that is we got some sub-steps. First step is to educate yourself on Black history, real Black history, and Black business history. The second is to understand and embody the definition of equity, and then understand and embody the definition of inclusion. And then finally, put up or shut up. That's where the support comes in. And sometimes we want it to be, but sometimes it's not financial support. We also know that famous quote, which I am going to butcher, but something about your network is your net worth. And pretty much that boils down to there's a sharing of knowledge and a sharing of resources. So sometimes it isn't your dollars, but again, we want it to be. Sometimes it is saying, hey, y'all should check out this business over here, or you should hear what this entrepreneur has going on over here. So just think about, after you've done the other two sub-steps of equity and inclusion and educating yourselves, think about ways that you as an individual can support Black businesses and Black entrepreneurship.
Thank you, Tony.
And so there's so much good stuff that's really happening. I mean, if you look at the work that Lonewell is doing right now with new innovative fintech types of products, or if you look at what Pi and Wilson Lester and Talib is doing, and even Talib is doing with Knox Street Studios, just launched a TechStars initiative that happened in the Providence space. Dr. Margaret Bronson, another one of our members at Providence, she's really doing a good job reaching this group that we believe is going to be critical to our future, and that's going to be that Black female-led organization, or that Black female corporate executive that is really dealing with stress from all levels, holding the family together, dealing with the corporate minutia, and not having a place where they can just let their hair down and not be in the gaze of others who are evaluating. So we're going to develop programs specifically targeted at mind, body, and spirit and mental health to try to build back that key group, because if we can strengthen those Black women, that directly impacts black families, which that has a direct impact on schools and every other institution that we want to have an impact on. Now, what we'll have to do is find partners to do that, because it's not sexy. But I tell you, I don't know about y'all, but I have gone through some mental health challenges over this pandemic situation that we keep ignoring. And specifically for black people, when you think about the trauma and the stress that historically we've dealt with, and you heard Jay mention we're already bilingual. We got a code switch. We got to talk black and talk white, and we got to do all those things. I got to wear the right shade of gray pants and the right all to say that I'm safe and you can do business with me. Yeah. That's stressful every day to carry that weight. So we got to deal with mind, body, and spirit, and we got to start with black women first.
Thank you. I'm going to bring it all home, and I'm going to say thank you, first of all. Amazing black leaders, black innovation, black creativity, black excellence on this panel and what you've shared. And I'd like to sort of put a challenge out to this room. We have state leaders from everywhere across the state. We have in Providence 1898, which is a locally grounded and rooted organization, black-led, that is representing the legacy of Black Wall Street in Durham. We have NCIDEA, a statewide organization that's focused on building the ecosystems around our state for the benefit of all entrepreneurs, and it's focused on black entrepreneurship as well. And we have Forward Cities, a national organization that is focused on equitable ecosystem building around the country. Can we figure out how to create a model for how you do black entrepreneurship and support it at the systems level, at the local, regional, and statewide level in a way that we can create a model for the entire country? Oh, yeah. Can we do that? I think we can do that, right? So I challenge you all to make a commitment to how you are going to ensure that future for black entrepreneurship in North Carolina. Thank you.